RPG Rules Status Effects Tutorial 13, and we're going to have a look at some of the remaining ones: Damage Shield, Death Sequence, Harvest, and Conditional Status. So I'm going to kick off with Damage Shield. I've made one here. Set it back to default, and I've stuck it on this test dummy here. So he's got the Damage Shield as a passive. It's got a nice big sphere around it and a shockwave when it disappears. So if we have a look at that in game, Damage Shield basically adds an extra layer of hit points on top of your hit points. So when we target him, we can see his health bars sort of grayed out. But as we do damage to him, that sort of darkened area of the health bar diminishes. That was like the extra 20 hit points there on top of his normal ones. If we look at how that's done, we just need to go to the player HUD prefab. Where's that again? I've got one here, player HUD. And if we stop playing and have a look at its prefab, we can see that there's a health bar on the character and then a shield bar, which is a character HUD meter that's been set up to be semi-transparent with this top shield derived stat here. So that draws attention to the idea you can have multiple damage shields on top of you from different sources, each one with their own hit points, and when you take a damage, the one with the shortest duration gets damaged first. What else can we do with damage shields? If we just go back to Rainbow Guy, damage shield here, we can let them regenerate. We could say this one gets 2 hit points back every second, which, you know, makes it more powerful. So now when we do damage, you can see the damage shield sort of recovering there. We can have it start at 0 hit points, so that initially it starts with nothing and has to grow. I'd do that, for example, with Antea. She gets a damage shield when she's in contact with the earth that starts off at nothing. And you can see here the robot started off with no damage shield and it's having to grow up to full hit points. And the other thing we can set in the damage shield settings is the type of damage it blocks. Like if we get one that just blocks physical damage, we can now see that the orange ray, which does energy damage, goes right through it and just attacks his hit points. But say the punch from the indigo ray, which does crushing damage, is attacking the damage shield first. So you can have a damage shield not just as sort of a physical force field, but like a psionic only damage shield with extra hit points to defend against psionic attacks or against magic attacks or whatever. It's up to you what setting you want to choose there. So that's damage shields, fairly straightforward there. Let's have a look at harvests. So the idea of a harvest is that when it hits, the caster gets a roll on a reward table. Sounds a little bit weird, so I've made one here with harvest settings for the boss reward table, which has like a 20% chance of dropping certain pieces of equipment, 20% chance of dropping a boost, gives you 120 XP and so on. And let's put that on the red ray. This is sort of a don't do this bit of the tutorial. So we've got a harvest on there now. And we'll see that every time the red ray hits anything, we get a few credits, 8 credits every time roughly. We're getting some boosts now that our robot's dropped a couple of items already, a few of them. You know, this is not really something you want to do. What I have done with it, I will show you, is the scavenge. The reason this was made was for the scavenge power in the Gadgeteer power set. So we've got a power sets, gadgets, salvage. Salvage is a power area with a small radius. Where's where's the area effect settings down the bottom? Radius of 3, and it affects up to 1 target, and it affects targets of type dead enemies. And what it does is it puts the salvaged parts, a harvest on the character, on the dead enemy, which, let's have a look at that. Salvaged parts here. Retrieves from the scavenged robots table. It's got a 30% chance of happening. It used to only apply to robots, but it applies to everyone now, and also puts a salvaged buff on them. And somewhere we check that the the target has to be not salvaged already. So this is basically, if you go and stand near a dead enemy and use this power within 3 meters, they have a 30% chance of popping an extra item out. And that salvage robots table, where is that? That's in harvest, scavenge robots, reward table. Basically has an enhancement table in it, robot crafting drops. So you can drop one of these things here. So yeah, that's harvest. Little used one, I'd say, but basically used for that kind of ability. Similar to Diablo 2, barbarians had a find item on dead body power, which they could use. You may want to have, you could have a buff that gives you extra XP whenever you hit something from a shrine, perhaps, as well. That's another possibility with that. Do with that one what you will. Next one I have a look at is death sequence. So I'll just make one of these now. And these are basically when the death explosion it is. Not death sequence, yeah. When the character dies, he's got this status effect on them. They do various explodable things, and there's the option to disintegrate them so they disappear completely. So we'll make a death explosion here, which we'll call disintegrate. Disintegrate. It's going to disintegrate the target. We'll give it a 1 explosion, which can be, we'll make a power area. Quickly create a power area called disintegration. And it will be orange, radiation coloured. It will do a radiation damage to enemies, be instant. We don't need to worry about all that. Explode effects, we'll use generic energy burst. No max targets, we'll get it to do a little bit of damage, 5 to 10 damage, and maybe get it to do knockback as well, just for fun. Right, so that's the disintegration explosion, which has got a visual effect and everything. Disintegrate is going to make that happen when the character dies. We will give this a radiation tint, use the death explosion icon for it, and we are going to make the character glow orange. We've got an orange glow orange effect we can do on their root while they've got that effect on them. And we're going to put this on the orange ray, appropriately enough. So we'll take out that repel and replace it with disintegration. This means basically when you hit someone with the repel, another thing I want to do is I want to give this a long fixed duration. When you hit someone with the repel ray, they're going to glow orange, and when you defeat them, they're going to explode. One last thing I want to do for testing purposes, I want to up the damage of this a little bit. Let's make it 5 to 50 damage. Just so we're not here all day defeating this test robot. So we go. Glows orange. And boom! Explodes, knocking everything back, leaving no body behind. Glows orange. boom, explodes. We can do that to objects as well. Make that rock glow orange. This should be disappearing. Yep, make that one glow orange. Yeah, there seems to be a problem there with that rock, I'm not entirely sure. And we can make that glow orange, and it knocks everything back and does damage, and you can see the crate that we shot just disappears straight away. This is used in the Universe Gun demo for the holograms in the training room. They've got a death sequence on them as a passive, which does an explosion that does no damage, gives them a special shader effect, and makes them disappear in a shower of sparks rather than be defeated, so they look like virtual holograms. You could, for example, use this if you have an attack that turns a character into ice and shatters them on death. So instead of seeing, the normal effect where the character falls over and then just fades out after a while, you get that instant fade. The gameplay effects of this basically depend on the explosion you put in there. They also depend on, if you've got things like Harvest that works on dead bodies. Since I just mentioned that, there's no body left behind to target. Let's just have one more quick look at that. Disintegration. I could, for example, I've got a shrapnel in here somewhere, and a fire bomb. We could have a firebomb spawn. Let's make a really good disintegration. Firebomb spawn, so it's going to leave a fire patch behind. Oh no, that's the power projectile, is it? Yep. And fire patches area. That's a power area. Fire patch summon. So it'll create a fire patch, throw some projectiles out, and do a little explosion when we kill someone with this power now. Yeah, kill someone with this power. It's not the most superhero-y thing to do this. Yep. So the fireball's coming out there. Might have missed the fire patch, I'm not too sure. And it's pretty nearly killed me doing that. Yep, so that's the DeathExplosion. It works on props as well. You could have one that only works on props, do something like Freedom Force's molecular excitation there, where you charge up objects and they pulse and then explode with energy when they lose their hit points. Yep, all up to you really. What that power area does makes it quite a versatile one. So the last one I want to have a look at is conditional status. RPG rules, status, conditional status. And this basically just have a caster condition, a target condition, and a status. Now this has kind of been overridden a little bit by the fact that every status now has a caster apply condition and a target apply condition. I used to not have that and had to make a conditional status for every status where you want to do a check on it. This will stun only robots. This will do knockback only to metal targets, and so on. I have found there are still some uses for this. I'll just delete this one and just have a quick look for conditional status, and that's basically where you're mixing them up with conversions and so on. Yeah, we've got a few here. Arc if ionized. We already have an electric arc status that we're using for other things, so we just want to sort of recycle that. Stumble 20%. We're using stun 20%. We're using the standard stun, and we're just sticking a 20% condition on it, and we have stun 50% with a 50% condition and so on. Stun on full charge. We've got this is fully charged condition, so you only stun a character if you charge the power up to full. What's this one? Ionized 20%. The ionized buff doesn't actually do anything, but we have conversions and so on that check for the ionized buff exactly. So we can't just make another buff called ionized 20% and then hope that the conversion will find it. So yeah, that has some uses. Typically these are kind of like 25% knockback, 25% stun, that sort of thing. Yeah, but a lot of the time you can get away with not having a conditional status just by using the target and caster apply conditions. And we'll talk more about that. We talk more about them in the conditions tutorials. So yeah, that's the remaining set of status effects, all done. Death Explosion, Damage Shield, Harvest, and Conditional Status.